We begin with a historic election result here in Germany. The far-right Alternative for Germany party won Sunday's vote in the eastern state of Thuringia, where it's considered by German intelligence to be an extremist organization that threatens democracy. It's the first time in modern German history that a far-right party has come in first in a state election. The AfD won almost a third of votes in Thuringia and came a close second in the nearby state of Saxony. But its chances of governing remain slim as all other parties refuse to cooperate with it. Speaking after the results were announced, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz urged mainstream political parties to form coalitions without right-wing extremists.
The most recognizable face of Germany's far-right AfD. Now Björn Höcke has led a right-wing extremist party to victory in one of Germany's 16 states for the first time in post-war Germany. A historic victory, he declares. Now Höcke aims to lead the regional government here.
We are ready to take on the responsibility of forming a government. It's parliamentary tradition here in Germany that the strongest party invites others to talks. In the coming week, we'll hold talks in the party committees, we'll analyse the situation, and then we'll decide to whom we will present the offers of talks.
But just who would take up that offer is another question. Other parties have ruled out governing with the AfD, which they see as anti-democratic. In Germany's other regional election in Saxony, AfD came in second, but their margin behind conservative Christian Democrats was razor thin. The Christian Democrats now face challenging coalition talks to keep the AfD at bay. The results in Thuringia and Saxony are also seen as a disaster for the coalition governing in Berlin, led by the center-left Social Democrats. The mainstream parties face another challenge in 3 weeks when a third Eastern German state, Brandenburg, also votes for a new parliament. The AfD is leading polls there, but the far-left populist BSW is also a force to be reckoned with. The political landscape in the East is becoming increasingly unpredictable, just 1 year before national elections.
All right, let's have a more detailed look at the preliminary official results, beginning with Thuringia. The AfD in blue here was the clear winner with nearly a third of the vote, followed by the conservative CDU in black with less than a quarter. Chancellor Scholz's SPD received only 6%, while the other two parties in the national government, the Greens and the Free Democrats, will not be taking any seats in parliament because they fell below the threshold of 5%. The new left-wing populist Sarah Wagenknecht alliance in orange outperformed her old party, the Left, in pink. Let's get more on this from DW political correspondent Matthew Moore in Thuringia's capital, Erfurt. Matthew, these results are a historic victory for the AfD, but also for their lead candidate in Thuringia, Björn Höcke. What more can you tell us about him?
That's right, Buresh. I mean, this is a big night for the AfD, but what's striking is that this is a victory for the man, one of the most influential people in the party and someone on the far right of the party. And let me tell you a bit about Björn Höcke. This is a man that this year alone has twice been fined by a court for using banned Nazi-era slogans while out on the campaign trail. His critics say that he uses these dog whistle, kind of rhetoric, dog whistle, to kind of stir up neo-Nazis. This is someone who, by a court, can be described as a fascist. And quite frankly, on the campaign trail, he does sound like a fascist, right? So this is someone who's on the extreme right wing of the party, someone that takes his cues from ethno-nationalists. And so this is a victory for him on a statewide stage, and so that really sets the tone really for where this party is at, and the willingness really of people to vote for someone like that here in Thuringia. And so a milestone for the party as a whole, but a victory for the far right of the far right.
Despite that background that you just narrated there, Matthew, almost a third of the votes are going to the AfD. How likely is it that the party could enter government?
It's going to be incredibly difficult, Buresh, because, you know, as we heard, there is this firewall, a Brandmauer, as they say in Germany, around the AfD. That is that democratic parties have said they will not touch it with a barge pole, not work with it, try really to kind of avoid it in Parliament. However, you see in the campaign trail there were parties, you know, that maybe said, with some issues we could maybe kind of come to an agreement, and that really kind of frightened a lot of kind of actually voters out there in Germany who were looking at this saying, is there going to be a crack in that firewall? Ultimately, the parties have said that they're not going to negotiate with the AfD. The AfD this morning are saying, hey, that's not democratically legitimate. We're in the top position. We should call the shots. I think it's going to be very unlikely that that will happen. What you might see, though, is that the AfD has a really strong third of the votes now, and that gives them the power to cause trouble and block constitutional votes, and that can stop them from calling new elections if they can't form a government. That can stop them from appointing certain officials in the state security apparatus, for example, who in the state of Thuringia have labelled the party AfD. So now you kind of start to see the way in which the AfD can start to wield that power. They may not get into power, but they certainly have some power now.
We'll leave it there for the moment. DW political correspondent Matthew Moore joining us from Erfurt. Thanks so much. There were elections also in the larger state of Saxony, which includes the cities of Dresden and Leipzig. Let's have a look at the preliminary results there. The mainstream Conservatives came out as the strongest party with nearly 32%, edging out the AfD, which is said to be the second strongest party. The Sarah Wagenknecht alliance came in third, with other parties in single digits. DW political correspondent Gyula Sardelli is standing by in Saxony's capital, Dresden. Gyula, so the Conservatives remain the strongest party here, but will they be able to form a government?
Well, the Conservatives are about to face some difficult negotiations to try to form that government. An easy solution would be to form a government with the AfD. They would have definitely a majority there, but we know that the CDU has said clearly they do not want to form an alliance with the AfD. They want to keep that firewall up to not allow the AfD to come into government. So if they stick to that position, we will not see an easy government formation here. There is a possibility that the CDU will have to go into a minority government, possibly with Chancellor Olaf Scholz's SPD party, possibly still with the Greens, but that would mean that they would need the external support of the Sarah Wagenknecht alliance, who would not be part of the government, but members of the party would probably have to vote in favor of some of the measures that the CDU government would want to pass, and that might prove complicated, also because the Sarah Wagenknecht alliance has some positions that are close to those of the AfD, for example, on migration, for example, for support to Ukraine, which they want to pull back. So this looks like quite a complicated situation for the CDU here in Saxony.
Well, the fact remains that the far-right AfD did come in second and says it does want to be part of the government. Is that a realistic wish?
It is a realistic wish, but we have heard from the CDU, but also from the other parties, that they don't want anything to do with the AfD and government. We've even heard from Chancellor Olaf Scholz inviting all the other parties to form alliances to keep the AfD out. One thing is for sure, were the AfD then to be in the opposition, they are likely to continue their strong opposition. They're likely to continue to drive public debate and also influence the political agenda. But the big question that now arises also at the national level is, can the other mainstream parties in Germany continue to keep the AfD out? Is it something that is realistic when the AfD gets so many votes and has so much support? Or will a time come in Germany when the AfD becomes a mainstream party and enters actual government, something that has started happening across Europe, but we have not yet seen in Germany?
We'll leave it there for the moment, but thanks so much for joining us today this morning. DW's Gyula Sardelli in Dresden. Thanks so much. For an overall view of what these results mean, I'm joined by DW's chief political editor, Michaela Küffner. Michaela, good morning. What do these results mean for the government at the national level with a year to go before national elections?
Yes, they put the government of Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who's from the Social Democrat Party, under intense pressure. Even the Social Democrats who are leading the government are in low single digits in both of those states that went to the polls. And although both states that voted on Sunday only make up just under 8% of the German population. Timing is key. It shows a potential wider trend in Germany's east, in those eastern states, which in the past were traditionally strongholds of the left party, the successor party to the communists of former East Germany. And that appears to have completely changed in these elections. All of a sudden, we see voters looking for also the identity of the East in a far-right anti-migration party, the Alternative for Germany. And the really interesting thing today is whether we will see messages of unity, that this complicated, infighting three-way coalition of Olaf Scholz might be determined to really stick together now and get better in their messaging, or whether the three parties will now go into booster mode of already campaigning against each other. That is something that we have seen in recent weeks and months, with each of the three parties in the current coalition eager to demonstrate their own profile and set it against the other partners. So that's the big question here in Berlin today.
But what explains these results that we are seeing in the east of the country? Is it all to do with dissatisfaction over migration?
Well, it's not all to do with migration, although migration was in spot 1 and 2 on the list of concerns of voters. But there is a deep sense of frustration. There is, most of all, a very bleak outlook into the future. And this is something that actually is nationwide and that really needs to concern Olaf Scholz to turn the tide on that. There's a lot of dissatisfaction with the central government as well, which clearly didn't help. Olaf Scholz has very low popularity ratings. And interestingly, it was not any of those parties that are currently in the governing coalition who managed to really make any kind of gains or even keep their own level. It is the Conservatives, the Angela Merkel's CDU party, that is the main opposition party here in Germany at the moment, that can now claim to be the most effective way of keeping the far-right Alternative for Germany at bay in these two eastern states. Having said that, timing is everything. It's a regional election year here in Germany where we're going to see one more eastern state of Brandenburg also go to the polls. It is Social Democrat led, and there will be a big test for Olaf Scholz's party and himself, whether the Social Democrats can actually themselves hold up against the far-right AfD party. But I think it's rather telling that the state premier, the Social Democrat state premier, doesn't seem that keen on his own chancellor appearing in that campaign. So we'll know more on the 22nd of September when those polls are conducted here.
We'll leave it there for the moment. DW Chief Political Editor Michaela Küffner, thanks so much.